All right, let's just get right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. We're tackling a massive frustration that I know so many of you are entirely too familiar with. Look, you sit at a desk all day, right? You train hard a few times a week, you do all your cool downs, and yet your hips, your hamstrings, and your lower back still feel like they belong to someone twice your age. You're putting in the work, but that chronic tightness, it just won't leave you alone. Today, we're breaking down a really fascinating source that explains exactly why your current routine is probably failing you, and more importantly, what you actually need to do to fix it once and for all. So, Section 1, Why Stretching Isn't Working. Tell me if this sounds like you. You've been stretching, maybe literally for years, and your hips are still inexplicably tight. Or maybe your lower back just completely locks up the second you finish a long day of work. Or your hamstrings pull the exact moment you try to do anything, even remotely explosive or athletic. It's a huge paradox, right? Especially for dedicated desk workers and athletes. You put in the time. You sit on the floor after a workout, count to 30, and tell yourself you did something good for your body. But years of this passive stretching still hasn't helped you move properly. Well, our source really hit the nail on the head here. It's time to actually fix the root problem instead of just slapping a Band-Aid on the symptom. Just consider this insight from the source for a second. Sitting at a desk for 8 hours is tissue breakdown. We usually think of sitting as just resting, right? But here's the thing. Your body doesn't care how busy you are with emails or spreadsheets. Your joints desperately need mechanical input to stay healthy. They need active, controlled movement through their full range. If you ignore this mechanical requirement, it literally leads to actual tissue degradation at the cellular level. So think about it. If you're subjecting your body to 8 hours of cellular breakdown, a quick 30-second toe touch stretch at the end of the day, that is fundamentally the wrong tool for the job. Moving on to Section 2, Passive Flexibility versus Active Mobility.
We really need to understand the difference between passive flexibility and active mobility. On one side, passive flexibility is exactly that. It's passive. It's just how far your joint moves when something else pushes it. That could be gravity, a stretching strap, or just the floor. But on the other side, we have active mobility. This is how far you can move that joint yourself, entirely under your own muscular control. The source points out that most people only ever train the passive side of things, but active mobility, that is the absolute only way to train your joints to actually control a range of motion rather than just kind of limping into it.
And this brings us to a really crucial concept, the injury gap. When you do all that passive stretching, your joints are getting pulled into ranges of motion they don't actually possess the strength to control. That dangerous space, the gap between where you can be pushed passively and where you can actively control yourself, that is precisely where injuries happen. You are essentially creating this massive zone of instability in your body. If you want to actually fix your pain and tightness, you've got to close that gap. All right, Section 3, the 5-move mobility fix. Let's get into the solution. We kick things off with move 1, the downward dog to deep lunge. You're going to want to spend 1 minute on each side here. You start out in a downward dog and you actively drive 1 foot forward into a deep lunge. Hold it and push back. The key word here is absolutely actively. Unlike passive holding, this first move forces your body to load the tissue under tension. You are actively loading the hip flexor at its absolute end range instead of just sitting in a passive stretch on the floor, hoping and waiting for something magical to happen. Now, move 2 addresses a massive flaw in most routines. It's the kneeling Cossack squat to hamstring stretch. Again, doing 1 minute per side. You take a wide stance, drop one knee, and shift your weight laterally. So, why does this matter so much? Well, because most mobility routines out there only work in straight lines, forward and back. But your hips are multi-directional joints. Almost nobody trains lateral movement. By adding this move, you're finally giving your hips that 360-degree mechanical input they've been craving. This next one brilliantly illustrates a huge biomechanical insight. Move 3 is the glute bridge with rotation. So it's a standard glute bridge, but as you reach the top, you rotate the knee out, which combines hip extension with thoracic rotation. And here is the big secret the source reveals. Most lower back stiffness actually starts way higher up, in the thoracic spine. What happens is your mid-back stops rotating because of all that desk sitting. So your lower back tries to cover for it, it completely overworks, and then it takes all the blame. This move restores that lost rotation right where it actually belongs. Okay, next up, we're targeting the hidden culprit. Move 4 is seated hip internal rotations. You sit on the floor, knees bent, feet flat, and just rotate both knees to one side. Internal rotation is literally the single most neglected direction of hip movement. If your hips feel locked up despite months of regular stretching, this is exactly why.
You've been totally ignoring internal rotation. Finally, move 5 is the progression. It's that same seated hip internal rotation, but this time you extend one leg out as you rotate. But hey, a quick word of warning from the source here. This is significantly harder than it looks. By extending that leg, you are demanding way more range, and you're putting much more active load onto the joint in that severely neglected internal rotation position. So take it slow.
And that brings us to section 4, building the daily habit. The entire core thesis of this routine comes down to one number: 10. 10 minutes of daily, consistent active mobility drastically outperforms sitting on the floor for 70 minutes of passive stretching just once a week. And the research absolutely backs this up. Your body adapts to the mechanical inputs it receives most frequently. If you consistently show up for these 10 minutes every single day, you are going to see massive, game-changing improvements in your joint health.
Just as a quick aside, the creator of this routine, Yellow Dude, recently celebrated 1.5 million subscribers by announcing a limited release of 200 mystery boxes containing exclusive workout gear and collectibles. It's a huge milestone that really reflects the channel's incredible consistency, which is exactly the kind of consistency we're talking about here.
So, the real work is on you now. Will you swap your passive stretching for just 10 minutes of active mobility tomorrow morning? Are you ready to stop letting gravity dictate your range of motion, close that dangerous injury gap, and finally take active control of your joint health? Think about it, and we'll see you next time.